This video is sponsored by Established Titles. Established Titles is a project based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. People can buy as little as 1 square foot of dedicated land so that they can call themselves a lord or lady. Established Titles is committed to planting a tree with every order and work with global charities, One Tree Planted, and Trees for the Future. This makes it a fun and novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland while helping natural reforestation efforts. Title packs will give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and an official certificate with a crest. Your certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. You could then officially change your name to Lord or Lady and get it on your credit card, plane tickets, or dating profiles. The first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to my plot within a few minutes of walking distance. Depending on how many of you want to become a lord or a lady, we can build our little nighttime spooks kingdom. It makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is actually running a massive Black Friday sale right now. Plus, if you use the code SPOOKS10, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/spooks10 to get your gifts now and help support the channel. This story takes place a few years back. At the time, I was 21 years old and was working a job at an arcade not too far from where I lived. The arcade was a really popular spot for birthdays or anybody on weekends. There was a smaller bowling alley, some places to eat and get food, and then a massive arcade. At the time of this event, I'd been working there for almost a whole year. I knew my way around the arcade really well by then and had recently become one of the managers. Many nights, I would be in charge of locking up the place. That's what I was doing one Friday night as I was working a closing shift. I really disliked this because we closed at 11 p.m. on Fridays and I had to open the next day as well. This meant I wouldn't get out of work until probably almost midnight and then would have to be back at around 8:30 because we opened at 9 a.m. the next day. Friday night was busy, just like it usually was. The building itself was mainly the bowling/eating area and then the arcade area on the other side. We had about 10 people working at the busiest times, and then went down to 5 shortly before closing, and after we closed, I would be the last one there. Things remained busy all the way until about 10:30, and finally started to quiet down. Then, at 11 p.m., we were closed, and I began my after-hours duties. I cleaned all around the arcade, vacuuming, disinfecting machines and games, and changing out the trash cans. Things weren't too dirty, and I got through most of the cleaning fairly easily. But when I got to the back corner of the arcade, I was vacuuming when I thought I started to hear some noises. I was the only person working, so this was strange. The vacuum was kind of loud, so at first, I didn't think it was anything, or I thought that it was just in my head, but I kept hearing things. I ended up turning off the vacuum. Then, there was silence. After I was done vacuuming, I was changing a trash can in the corner and thought I heard a noise again. The noises were all pretty small. I couldn't really make out what exactly they were, but I had a bad feeling. It was strange because I had worked all by myself after close several times before and never had anything like this happen. I decided to look all around the arcade to put my mind at ease. I went through the entire place, looking in every area and checking the bathrooms, but didn't see anybody or hear anything at all this time. When I was sure everything was good and I was done with my work, I locked the doors and headed home for the night. After getting home, I pretty much went straight to bed and then got up early the next morning and got ready for work. I got into work at about 8:20 and began getting the place ready to open. 4 other coworkers would be coming in at about 8:45 or 8:50 to get the place ready to open as well. We would generally not be all that busy for the first hour of being open, but then start to get really busy at about 10 a.m. on a Saturday. Right away when I got inside, I knew something wasn't right. A few of the chairs in the dining area were out of place. I knew that I had them all in order from the previous night. I instantly remembered the noises that I had been hearing the night before. Then, I heard them again. More noises coming from the arcade area. I looked, but still didn't see anything. I thought about just leaving and waiting in my car until the rest of my coworkers got there, but ultimately, I decided not to and chose to investigate. I walked into the arcade and to where I thought I heard the sounds coming from. I heard something once more. It was within probably 20 feet of me, but I couldn't tell exactly where it was coming from. I examined the area for a bit, and then I walked to the back wall. From there, I could see a different view. There was a basketball machine where you could shoot some hoops and it would count your score and stuff. Well, behind that machine, there was this hidden area just big enough for a person. I went and looked there and saw a man crouched down. As soon as I looked, he looked back up at me. He had long, messy hair and a scraggly beard. The guy locked eyes with me and just stared. I expected the guy to run away or something, but instead, he came out and stood up aggressively. He didn't charge at me, but I didn't even give him the chance. As soon as he stood up from behind the machine, I ran away. I ran all the way out of the arcade, screaming like a little kid. I got back to my car and locked the doors. I considered driving away, but after catching my breath, I realized that I needed to stay and call the police. I got out my phone and dialed. As I was speaking with the 911 operator, I kept my eye on the door, expecting the man to leave at any moment. He didn't though, and I waited in my car for about 10 minutes until the police arrived at the scene. When they got there and entered the arcade, several of my coworkers were arriving as well. The man eventually was let out by police, and when we went back inside the arcade, we saw that he had caused more damage. Some of the machines were knocked over, and one of them even had the glass smashed. This made me realize the guy was probably dangerous and not just hiding in the arcade for some reason. I'm really glad that I got away from him. This happened many years ago when I was a kid. At the time, I think I was about 9 years old. When I was a kid, I played baseball every spring and summer. That year, I was on a Little League team, and it was early in the season. I don't remember why, but we had one of our practices at a batting cage, which was connected to this arcade place. It was probably bad weather outside or something, but our whole team of about 12 kids met at the arcade and all took turns hitting in one of the 5 batting cages they had. This place was mostly known as an arcade, but they had batting cages as well that kids could use to practice, and we hit for maybe like an hour and then the practice was over. My dad took me, and I remember I wanted to hit one more time for some reason, and so I ended up being the last person on my team there. When I hit my final round, we started to leave, but my dad ran into somebody that he knew right before we got to the exit doors, and they started talking. I got bored within seconds, and I wandered off into the arcade area. The arcade was kind of closed off with a wall separating it from the batting area, and then there was a spot for mini golf too. I walked into the arcade and saw kids playing on the many machines that they had. I wanted to win some tickets, but I didn't have any money. I started walking around the arcade, just looking at what they had. When I was near this one Pac-Man game that was against the wall, I saw that there was a couple of tokens on the floor. They were really hard to see, and somebody must have dropped them sometime earlier. I went over and picked them up. Now I had a chance to play a few games and win some tickets. I walked around looking for what games I thought would win me the most. I went over and played one of those games where you whack the moles as they come out of the ground, and they're spinning around. If you get your timing just right, you can get a really high score. After I played that, I got a good number of tickets, and then decided to take a risk with my last coin, and play one of those games where you drop a ball and hope it lands in the highest scoring spot. Unfortunately, I didn't win, but overall, I still had enough tickets to get something from the prize area. I started to walk over there, but then I saw a man walking towards me from the other side. I stopped to see what he wanted. The guy came up to me and said that he saw me find those tokens on the ground. I was nervous at first, thinking maybe those tokens were his or his kids or something. The guy, I remember, was bald, but he had a bit of a beard. He said that he thought it was cool and asked me if I wanted more coins. He said his kid went off to play mini golf and he had a bunch left over. I was excited by this, and I followed the guy to the end of the room. He opened the door into what I thought was one of the party rooms. I actually had been to a birthday party at this arcade once, and I knew they had some private rooms for people to have cake and stuff on the edges of the building. So I followed the guy out the door, but then realized that we were not in the arcade anymore. We were in like a random hallway that led to the outside. I felt really stupid immediately. How was I so dumb to believe this guy? I turned back, but the man yelled at me to stop. He then started to walk over to me. As I was near the door, though, I thought I could hear yelling coming from the other side. The guy came closer, but the yelling from the other side of the door got louder. We both paused, and I turned, and then saw that the guy that led me out there was now walking quickly by himself to the exit door and leaving. I walked back to the door to the arcade and opened it to see my dad like 2 steps away. He saw me, and then went out into the hall and asked me what on earth I was doing. The guy who told me to go there was gone by now, though. I explained the whole situation to my dad, and overall he was just happy that I was okay, but reminded me not to talk to adults that I didn't know unless he was there. Looking back at that, I'm really glad my dad was there, because I think I possibly would have been abducted. Last year, I was at a mall near where I live. I was doing some shopping, and it was in the morning, not too long after the mall had opened. In fact, there weren't too many people there yet at all. This was nice because I could get my shopping done faster and easier. I wasn't in a hurry though, and I stopped to get a coffee and then walked through the halls to locate the first store I was going to. As I walked down one of the halls, I noticed a new thing in the mall. It was an arcade, and it was in the place of one of the older stores that had left. It seemed pretty cool. I used to love going to arcades when I was a kid, and I walked inside to just check it out. There were no employees inside. It was very modern and just like a giant room with sort of dim lighting and neon lights here and there. There was dark colored carpet as well, and every place to get tokens or prizes was done through like an electronic vending machine. Nobody else was in there at the time, which wasn't all that surprising with the mall just recently opening. As I checked out some of the games and stuff, I walked all the way to the end of the arcade. When I was there, something caught my eye. There was this guy who appeared to be laying on the ground, hiding between a machine and the wall. It would have been really hard to see the guy if I wasn't in that exact spot. As I was staring at him, he turned and faced me. I saw then that his entire face was painted. It was painted to sort of look like a clown. Without saying a word, he got up and then just walked out rather quickly. I thought this was extremely weird, but then moved on. I did some shopping in the other stores, and when I was in probably the second or third store for the day, I noticed the clown guy again. He was walking behind me, seemingly staring at me as he did. Not long after, he left and walked away, only to appear again like 30 minutes later. As I walked through one of the mall hallways to leave, he was walking behind me about 30 feet back. Was he following me for some reason? And why was his face painted like a clown anyways? Overall, this guy just seemed really strange. I left the mall and walked out to the parking garage where my car was. The guy behind me did the same. I felt him getting faster behind me. Pretty soon, I could hear him running. I turned around and saw him sprinting straight towards me. I froze. I didn't know what to do, but when the man got within probably 10 feet of me, he suddenly veered off and then ran into the other direction away from me. I heard him laughing an insane and creepy-sounding laugh as he did. I was beyond weirded out. I got into my car and left. Whoever that guy was, he must have been insane or something.